Just the guy I wanted to talk to. Ryan Cheevers, what's up, man?
I'm doing well. How are you, Johnny?
I'm doing great. And you are you also win the award for the person I've known the longest of
I
anybody that I've talked to so far. So I think you're gonna come close unless I talk to one of my brothers or my mother. You will be probably the one of the longest running people or people that I've known um, that I'm talking to on this
pro-
podcast.
for as long as you have a memory, I feel like I think it was since
Not.
you were probably in diapers.
I probably was.
I want to say it was like on the soccer field. I was playing with your brothers, and you were running around on the sideline. You know, I have those memories of it, and yeah, and then we took like a break for a while because I was gone and you were here,
Mhm.
and then we reconnected. So it's pretty awesome.
It is pretty awesome. I mean, and I think that's a good place to start because you come from just like me, you come from a pretty good sized family, but your family, I think, had a love for soccer just like my family did. I myself didn't have as much of a love as my family members and my brothers, but that's sort of how our paths first crossed. But it was also you were what you were what, 5, 6 years old probably when you started.
Yeah, we so I'm one of five. So
Yeah.
I've got two brothers. And I have an older sister and a younger sister. So we're kind of the brothers are sandwiched in the middle there.
Yeah.
Soccer, we just were on the soccer field all of our lives. And my dad worked for UPS. He's the longest tenured UPS employee ever in Southwest Michigan, and he retired about 4 years ago. So he was always showing up to games, kind of like Superman, but with his UPS outfit underneath his coaching jersey. So yeah, I don't know how they did it. I don't think they expected their kids to play so many sports, but we were all over the place and they managed to survive it somehow.
Yeah, what is it with soccer? I mean, people they start at such a young age, and that's the thing is that you and my brothers especially, I think that parents get your kids into organized sports like soccer and think that all right, they're going to try that out for a little bit, and maybe they'll play in high school, but I don't think that my parents and even your parents expected it to stick for that long and also become where you started like traveling and had to make trips to go and play a soccer game. I think it grew a little bit faster and more than they were expecting.
Well, it's interesting because I coaching now. So I coach my 7-year-old, his team. And so seeing it from the coaching perspective, soccer is easy as a parent. Baseball, there's a lot of gear. There's
Mhm.
a lot of stuff to wash. And football, it's more expensive. There's more gear. Hockey is a big thing right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just soccer. You just throw the cleats on, push them out in the field, and then they can go. And so I think it's just an easier sport. It's just, there's a certain point where
Mhm.
you either go from the AYSO to the travel soccer. And so we'll just see if my kids decide to make that jump, but we'll find out here in the next few years.
When you first started doing stuff like that and playing soccer, were you like really into it, or were you just doing it because either your parents told you, "Hey, we're going to play soccer," or did you have friends that were into it? Is that really where the love came from?
I think my older sister was very good. Like, when I was getting started at like 5, 6 years old, she was 8, 9, and she
Mhm.
was very, very good. I mean, she went on to be a 4-year starter at St. Joe, was all state, I think 2 or 3 years. So I think I was always kind of competing to be kind of like her. So I didn't really have a lot of friends that played. It was more of she was doing it, so I was just going to follow in her footsteps, sort of thing. And I think it's the same with my brother under me. He wanted to follow in my footsteps, so it was
Mhm.
just. I feel like that's kind of how it worked, and we were all pretty decent players. So I think we just wanted to keep playing year after year.
Yeah, and that's one thing that me being the youngest, I think the interest level for me being surrounded by, you playing with my oldest brother and then all my other brothers playing. And then once it got to the bottom two of us brothers, I think the interest level started to go away. Cause I mean, my mom still makes fun of me to this day about how I would just hang out with my friends, talk to them all the time. They used to do the whole the picking daisies and things like that. I never paid attention when I was playing soccer. I was just having fun with my friends.
And it's funny because your brothers, I mean, they probably were the best teammates ever because they were the enforcers on the field. So, they were very quick to, if I got knocked down, then the guy that knocked me down was probably going to get knocked down a few minutes later. That's just the style of play that you guys had. But that's tough to emulate. And it's interesting. My youngest sister is, she just turned 32.
Mhm.
So there's a pretty good age gap between her and my youngest brother. And her interests were different, just as his interests were different. So it's having that many kids, is truly a feat. And
Oh yeah.
the fact that we all kind of shared similar interests over the years is pretty interesting.
Well, and the funny part is that I don't think that the traveling teams were prepared for the Cheevers and the Reinhardts to show up on the travel trips, because I mean, the van doors would open and you'd think that it's like a clown car, because just the families and their stuff, their bags, you just had a ton of people coming out of those vehicles for those big long trips that we would have to take, 2, 3 states away for a travel weekend.
Oh man. And I remember from a player's perspective, showing up and playing, but now as a parent, how much prep goes into getting kids in the van, getting lunches ready. Like it's a whole different world when you have kids playing now. And yeah, we pretty much could field an entire team between our two families.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's what we didn't know if our parents were trying to field a basketball team or what their plans were, but I mean, we could pretty much cover any sport you can think of. But you continued on and doing a lot of sports. Now, your kids are playing some sports right now. Are you getting them excited about it? Is it exciting you that you get to have your kids learn something that you grew up learning and enjoying when you were a kid?
I think what excites me is that they're interested in things that I wasn't interested in growing up. Like my son, he likes soccer, he likes baseball, but his passions are, he loves to be on the computer. He loves WWE. These are things that just I didn't grow up with. My daughter loves to write, loves to read. I mean, she's got a folder down here in my basement that says scripts on it, and she's written, several little scripts and sketches, and she's trying to get into acting. I mean, so I think that's what's most cool to me, is that they're doing things that I didn't do growing up.
Sure.
And to me, that's more refreshing than them kind of doing a lot of what I did.
Well, what's interesting is that they're kind of getting into the stuff that you're interested in now. So, I mean, at what point did you? Because I mean, you've done a lot of stuff, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, as far as your cross country trip and then living in California, doing some cool things over there. But what was the moment that you were like, I kind of want to, did you guys do family videos, or did you have like a camera that you took on trips, or what made you get into like something like
video production style
like
stuff?
that?
I was a huge movie fan growing up, like E.T. and Jurassic Park, and all those movies from the 80s, the Goonies. And so we had an RCA camcorder that you set on your shoulder and filmed family videos for. And it got more use around the house with us making little movies than it did on family trips. But my dad always had it with us, or with him. And so he would record soccer games and basketball games and all of that stuff. So it got great use. So I think that's really, I don't even know if he hadn't had that, whether I would have been interested in kind of making movies. Because at the time it was more of just, I liked movies and I had an opportunity to film some of my own stuff. And so that's, I think, where the passion started.
And the time that you were growing up, and really that age of those late 80s, early 90s. I mean, the amount of movies and the cool things they're doing, and the stuff that, honestly, a lot of those movies still stand up to this day, for many reasons, of still some of the greatest special effects I've ever seen, and no computer can generate some of the stuff that they were able to do, with, whatever they were doing behind the scenes with all that stuff. Did you ever get into acting when you were in like middle school, high school? Is because
I
obviously sports probably took up a lot of your extracurricular time with things, but did acting or anything like that interest you?
Not really. I took an acting class in college, and then and I enjoyed it. It was super fun, and I think it was kind of cool to be on that side of the camera or on the stage versus watching. So I developed an appreciation for it, but I never, when I went out to Los Angeles, there was never a moment where I thought maybe I could do something in front of the camera. That was just never an interest of mine.
Yeah. But what made you want to make that trip to LA? Because I mean, that's what some people say. Like, I'm gonna, you go to LA with the dream of, big aspirations of, I want to work on a movie, or be, if you're an actor, you want to be a big movie star and things like that. But what was going through your mind, and also your parents? What did they say when you said, I'm gonna go to California and see what I can do?
Well, it's interesting because they were because when I went to college, I spent my first year not sure what I was going to do, but I was studying special education at Kalamazoo Valley Community College, and got an associate's degree there, and then there was a program at Spring Arbor University, a film program there,
Hmm.
and they had a internship opportunity in LA. So I somehow got wind of this, and I knew right then that I've got to go for this because, I loved the teaching stuff at the time when I was doing it in school,
Sure.
but I still had that passion to be in the entertainment industry, and to work in film, and editing was what I knew. I was editing before that, VHS to VHS, and converting any VHS tape that I could. And so, I went to Spring Arbor University, got the film studies degree, and yeah, the leap to LA was tough because no one left this town in my
Hmm.
whole family, so it was a little bit scary. And then also, I had just gotten engaged to my high school sweetheart, my wife now, and so I was leaving. She was staying here. We were engaged, and so it was just an unusual set of circumstances. But I kind of gave myself 4 months to just go for it, and that's and I had a good first 4 months out there, and that led to several years.
So, okay, so Carrie, your lovely wife, you guys had this conversation. She just said, "I'm going to stay." You go. Did she expect that 4 months sort of trial period that you had? Did she expect that you just come right back, or what was that conversation like?
They well, it's She was working for Whirlpool at the time,
Okay.
and she had her own like big dreams of. I mean, she actually wanted to work in eye care. She wanted to be an ophthalmologist at one time, and so when I went out there and started to establish myself, she moved out, and I think that gave her an opportunity to kind of restart a little bit, and focus more on the dream that she wanted to do. So she was in eye care for, probably 10 of the 11 years that we were living out in LA. And so her journey, it kind of, weaved into mine, and she was super supportive, and I think it could not have worked out better. But also, I interned out there at Warner Brothers. And so a lot of people, after the internships ended, they would move back to their home states, and I purposefully left my car in a parking lot there so that I'd have to come back and at least come get it. But I knew if I drove it back to Michigan, that there was a chance I wasn't gonna come back. And
Yeah.
so I left it, in some apartment complex, and it was still there when I got back, but I never left at that point.
How many tickets did you have on that car? And how
I
long
had a
were you there?
it was an inside job, so I was working with somebody there that allowed me to park in their parking lot, so it worked out fine.
So tell me about this internship. So you got this internship from when you were doing film school at Spring Arbor. So you were able to make that jump already with something, not a paid job, but something to at least get you established with, I guess, that gateway to where something could happen if you do a good job in that internship. Because that's really what I mean. Not being in the film industry, from what I've heard from so many people, is that if you do well, somebody may notice you and then maybe bring you on for something else, and that chain reaction happens. So what was the internship like? Was it on a TV show, or was it a movie, or what was it? What were you doing in this internship?
So I was interning for a company called Weed Road Pictures. It was a guy named Akiva Goldsman, who wrote. He At the time that I was interning, I mean, this is a small office. There was, I think he had 4 staff members and himself on the Warner Brothers lot, and so he was adapting Da Vinci Code at the time in the office that I was. So I'm coming. I mean, I was living at Spring Arbor, left Spring Arbor to go to Burbank, in LA, and 4 weeks after I'm living in Spring Arbor, I'm interning at this office, and I literally was completely, I felt out of my league. And so, we worked a little bit with him directly, but it was just we were running all over the lot to do whatever they asked us to do. It was just one of those jobs where the more you hustled and more you paid attention and just did what you were asked, the better chance you had of getting referred once
Right.
the internship ended. And that's exactly what happened. I did some reading for them and some creative stuff, but I guess I was just very good at picking up lunches and not screwing up orders, to where they made a phone call and got me my first job after that. So it very much was like, just put your head down, hustle, and don't screw anything up, sort of thing. And he was working on that. He was working on Cinderella Man at the same time. He was coming off A Beautiful Mind, and he had just won the Oscar. So it was the perfect place, because I, love the writing process, and the fact that this guy was just, a few doors away working on one of the biggest films at the time was really, really cool.
Yeah, and so the 4 months of good things going on. I mean, was that the internship, or is it you also got the paid gig within that 4 months?
Yeah, so I got my internship ended, I think, and it was a December, and then by February I got a call from someone that was working at that company, and said, "Look, there's a job open, and I think you'd be perfect for it." So I went and interviewed for it and got it, and that was a company called Radar Pictures, and they had just they were coming off Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2003, Amityville Horror, and the head of that company, founded Interscope Records. So it was just another place that was just very unique, had a kind of a rich history of working in entertainment, and a much bigger company. So yeah, so it was a great transition for me, and I wound up being there for about 5.5 years.
Wow. And so what was your, I guess, your moment that probably one of your favorite moments of working out there, whether it was a movie or the job that you got to do, or just, something fun that you got to experience out there?
So later on, after I left that Radar, I went to a company called Red Granite Pictures, and they were they produced Wolf of Wall Street and Dumb and Dumber 2. So I got to work fairly directly with the Farrelly brothers on Dumb and Dumber 2. So
Wow.
we were reading anytime a new draft would come in for the script. We were having to read and do tons of notes, and we were sometimes even typing up jokes that made more sense than what was in there. And I think that experience of working with those guys on kind of a direct basis was pretty awesome, because going back to the 90s and some of the iconic movies in
Hmm.
comedy, especially with the Dumb and Dumber, Something About Mary, those type of movies that I was obsessed with.
Oh
It
yeah.
just was very surreal to be a part of that project, even though the end product wasn't the greatest thing ever. The whole process was super cool, and those guys are just incredible. And Jim Carrey, Jeff Daniels, they're just incredible people. It's So it was a really neat experience to be a part of that whole project from start to finish.
So what did you do on some of those? I mean, it sounds like you did a lot of like helping with script supervision or things of that sort. I mean, obviously when you're looking at a script from the Farrelly brothers, I mean that had to have been like a childhood dream come true moment of the something you grew up watching, the Dumb and Dumber movies, the Something About Mary's and all those movies that they had made, and just that iconic comedy of the early 90s. What was it like to finally pick up the behind the scenes sort of stuff, not only the script itself, but all that other stuff? So is that what you got to be able to do? Is that kind of thing?
So I was like, my title was a production coordinator, and I was working for, so it was kind of an all hands on deck sort of thing, especially with the last job I had out there with
Mhm.
Wolf of Wall Street and Dumb and Dumber Two, and we we read a lot of stuff that came in. Specifically with Dumb and Dumber Two, it got bounced around and kicked around and passed on, for several years because no one really wanted to make that sequel, and Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels weren't really interested. So I think when we came on board, I think they were just at a certain time where they were ready to give it a shot, and
Yeah.
there were a lot of those type of movies that were happening, those sequels with those stars from the '90s, and so the whole thing kind of came together. And like I said, it wasn't a big office at this place, and so we were pretty, just in the trenches with all of the stuff that was going on. It was almost surreal at times, when I'd come home and tell my stories to Carrie, and she would come home and tell her stories of working in eye care and how refreshing it was to hear hers, and she was so impressed to hear mine. It was like that so often, but it's also a business too, so
Yeah.
there's not a whole lot of glamour that goes on behind the scenes. It can be pretty crazy at times, but it just was just so much fun. And specifically with that project, it was probably my favorite to work on because of the fact that it was a comedy and you had those two guys that were just legends.
Absolutely. And one thing I know that you've told me before about that movie specifically is that probably also taught you about no matter how big the movie is and how big it is, there's one thing that's very important with any film, and that's budget and making sure that the money is right. And you said that Dumb and Dumber 2, even though some people and will say that it wasn't very good of a movie and some will call it a bomb, it actually wasn't if you look at the bottom line of things, right?
Yeah, we had a finance guy, that kind of did a forecast for what this movie could potentially make, kind of the high end and the low end. And, we were working with Universal at the time, and it just made sense to make this movie, because there was a lot more reward than there was risk
Mhm.
involved with it. And and one thing, going back to the Fairleys, I remember them saying that they never went over budget on anything.
Yeah.
And they may have at times. This is just something they had mentioned, and they didn't on that either. And so it was very impressive. But I think the movie broke even after that opening weekend. So it was very lucrative for the Universal and for the company that I was working for. And but just the build up to kind of the release of it, and obviously it did not get. I don't know if I'd ever check Rotten Tomatoes, but but it was just a neat experience,
Yeah.
and it was neat to kind of see that behind the scenes with the business side of it too, and why we should make this, not just from a creative standpoint, but from a financial as well.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing too is that you look at big movies like that, or you see some of the movies that are out there, and honestly, some movies they're just awful. But you wonder in the behind the scenes of what production company decide to give them the green light, because there's so many movies that I'm sure either you and people that are in the business that are trying to write and get things going and get the green light. I'm sure there's a ton of movies that you're like, God, this is awful, but it's a paycheck, and
Oh
I
man.
get this done. And even though I know my friend that is down the road has a dynamite script and a great team and all this, but he can't even get somebody to return his phone calls. So is that a hard thing to do or a hard pill to swallow when you're out in LA and you're working on a movie and it's probably going to suck, but you still do it because the paycheck's there?
Yeah, I mean, you'd see it all the time with writers specifically. You might read something bad, but they might know someone that wants to attach themselves to it because they've got someone that may have money that can, make an offer. So, money dictates an awful lot. I mean, I remember being, I think, 6 or 7 years into kind of the profession, and an intern that worked for me. Got a job as a writer on a show like 3 months after he left my internship. So it was like, wait, isn't it supposed to work differently? Like if this were the medical field, like I'm
Right.
6 years into, I mean, but that's just how that business works. And I was very happy for the guy.
Sure.
But at the same time, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I would love to be in that position as a writer on a show. Because that's what I was working on. I had these day jobs, and you know, outside of that, I was doing a lot of writing. So those type of things happened all the time, and you just kind of have to deal with it.
Now, so you now live in Southwest Michigan, so you're back. What was the thing that brought you back here? Was it the well dried up over there as far as jobs, or you just got tired of the way things were, or you just wanted to be closer to family? What of those things, or maybe it was all those things? What was that for you?
Well, we had my daughter. She was born out there, and then everything was fine. And then my son was born out there. And you go from one child to two, there was just a whole shift. Like I think we felt like we wanted to be back in Southwest Michigan. Both of our families were there, and I knew it was going to be a little tricky for me because of the experience that I had. But for her, having worked in eye care, it was an easy transition. So we just did it, and I still have ties to Los Angeles, so I'm still working out there quite a bit on different projects. But this is just an awesome community to live in, and we knew that our kids being closer to grandparents and cousins and was just something that we wanted for them.
Did you ever want to be like Ron Howard because he's also a ginger like you?
It's funny. So I got called Opie Taylor in basketball in high school when I played. It was Coloma. I played for St. Joe, and every time I touched the ball, they chanted Opie Taylor, and I just kept thinking they can't be chanting this for me. And it was the funniest thing. There's a tape out there somewhere, probably in my parents' basement, that has that game. And then when Akiva Goldsman, when I was interning, was working with him on Da Vinci Code, he was calling in every day himself, which never happens. So there's always like an assistant that would call for them. And so I was picking up these phone calls, and I would tell my mom back in St. Joe, because she was obsessed with Ron Howard, this guy was calling in, and she's like, tell him the Opie story. And I'm like, I'm not telling him the Opie story. I'm not going to blackball myself here.
So you never told him the Opie story?
No, I mean, it wasn't the right.
No.
Maybe someday. I think I might have been shown the door had I gone that route.
I think he would have stopped calling the office, and he would have probably been doing something else, or calling whoever directly without you being the one that
I know.
possibly answer. So
I think someone would have probably said, hey, there's the door. Good luck to you. Eventually,
I think that you'll be able to. I think your paths may cross again someday. You never know.
Yeah, he's less ginger now. He's got the gray going, but yeah, that would be something. You never know.
Yeah. I mean, and now that you're in Southwest Michigan, and the skill sets that you learned, and still doing some stuff with friends back in LA, and still being entrenched in some of that stuff. But in Southwest Michigan, you can bring those skill sets, and actually that's something that you have actually been doing with Little Red Fern Productions. One thing I got to ask is, I've been wanting to ask this ever since I've worked with you on stuff. What is the significance of the Little Red Fern?
So it comes from the radio station. It was when I played basketball at St. Joe. I was playing at Kalamazoo Central, and my grandparents at the time weren't traveling to away games, so they were only listening to the games on the radio. And Phil McDonald, and he was working with Brett Witkowski, I think, at the time on air. They called me a little red fern in a big forest during the play-by-play.
Okay.
And my grandparents never forgot it. I mean, they told me right away that you wouldn't believe what they called you, and I kind of dismissed it. And then, Rachel Wade at United Way had kind of brought it back around when I had told her the story. And so when I kind of ventured off from working at United Way to starting my own business, I wanted a name that, had some fun and, told a story as opposed to something too real traditional or corporate-y. And so that's what I did. I decided to bring that back, and that's been fun to kind of brand and see where that brand's gone. And it's always a fun story to tell when people ask.
Absolutely. And something I didn't even know. And I mean, I'm sure, have you told Phil and Brett that lately? Because I'm sure you guys' paths have crossed quite a lot lately.
I think I mentioned to Phil, and he did not recall
Okay.
that, and obviously I don't know how many thousands of games he's done, but it stuck in my grandparents' heads enough to where they could not wait to tell me about what they called me on the air.
I bet you, I guarantee you, Brett probably remembers or will act like he remembers talking about that, because I feel like that's something that he probably is the one that said it. So
Yeah.
that's interesting. So what are your goals now in Southwest Michigan? Because I'm sure you probably had another conversation with your wife about, okay, I want to do this and do a production company and start doing some things here. What was that conversation like, and what's your goal? I mean, do you want to start a Southwest Michigan film production company where we have TV shows and movies being produced here? What's your goal there?
Well, it's interesting because when I moved back here, I thought I was going to kind of start over. I mean, I thought about going back in education. I mean, there was a lot of different routes I was thinking of taking. The United Way connection, they were looking for volunteers, I think, at the time, and then they were hiring a marketing person. So I kind of got into the hiring pool there and got my job there. And then I think if it weren't for United Way allowing me to be a marketing person there that, could be very creative, I'm not sure I wouldn't be where I am now with running my own business.
Sure.
It would have taken a lot longer because, United Way is so connected to the community, and they were allowing me to kind of run with some of the ideas that I had at United Way, and then connecting with so many different people and businesses locally, that it started to shape kind of where I wanted to go. And, at that time it was, I can run a business, doing video marketing,
Right.
and I don't have to find, I mean, there's a lot of great jobs out there, but I'm someone that likes to be creative, and with this company, it's really about, creating engaging content, entertaining content, focusing on storytelling, but not just going out with a camera and filming. I really want to tell great stories, around the community, and I've been working with a lot of great businesses and have some great clients that I'm working with, and we've done some really cool things. So I feel probably, in all my career, probably feel like I'm in my happiest place now, because I've been able to use so much of what has been thrown at me over the years, so many different experiences, to now focus on, what's in front of me and not worry about whether I'm going to go to this place or lose this job. And so it's a great place to be in. And this is such a competitive area when it comes to video production. which is great because it's only making the work stronger and look better. And so I could not be happier with where I'm at now. And I think hopefully Little Red Fern can grow and be around for many years.
Yeah, and the good part about Southwest Michigan is that I think that people that have awesome skills like yourself and being in a smaller area, some people may have moved from those bigger cities and brought their skill sets and tried to start something, but the network I think is just starting out with people that you've crossed paths with working with United Way and some of the other things, and then Charles, who we will talk to on this podcast. I have to give a shout out to Charles because that's sort of how you and I our paths recrossed was your work at United Way. And it's funny because people were like, "Oh, do you know Ryan Cheevers? He's our new marketing guy." And I'm like, "Yeah, I've known him for I don't even know how many years now.
We're practically brothers."
Yeah, we're basically, yeah, definitely brothers. But I mean, the work that you did with some of the stuff, and honestly, if you want me in front of a camera any day, I'll do it because just it's fun. And I think that's something that you and myself and Matt Malone and Charles, the funny stupid stuff that we were able to do just for something that we weren't even sure how many people are actually going to see. It's something that I think people have talked about. All my family members talk about that stuff. So I'm excited to see what comes next for you and not only Little Red Fern, but just how this network of cool people that do awesome stuff is going to grow.
Well, it's my daughter's editing now. I mean, she's 9, and when I left for California, that was 2004. It's just a very different world. I mean, it's almost, this work is happening whether you have professionals doing it. You've got people that can do it now in offices because it's so easy. A lot of it's very easy to put together. So it's just becoming a lot more competitive, and that allows for more creativity, which is kind of my wheelhouse. And but yeah, the stuff that I've worked on with you, we've talked about it. There's going to be plenty of more that we're going to get together on.
That'll be fun.
As long as you got to have a laugh. That's my big thing. I think the entertainment aspect to some of this work, I think, is a piece that could really be heightened in this area specifically.
Absolutely. I mean, and there's businesses too that, I mean, they can look at their creativity, and that's what people are going to remember, is those fun laughs, the things that, I mean, just the other day I saw something that your daughter not only showing off her acting skills, but probably also set dressing skills with something you did for just a local HVAC company. So I mean, that
services, and that's what's great is you've got businesses like Boss Services they're wanting to do more of that creative style video marketing, and which means there's a lot more time invested in the prep and making sure that the story's crafted. You just can't go out and shoot film anymore, and it's just a cool process. All of it's what I really like, and I think we're seeing more and more businesses start to take that approach.
Yeah, and what do you see the future like for you? What are your hopes and aspirations for the future, for not just the things that you're doing here in Southwest Michigan, but just life? What's something you haven't accomplished yet?
I think I'm producing a podcast in LA called. It's very similar to yours, which is why I love your show. It's called "So How'd You Get Here?"
Yeah,
and I've never produced a podcast, and so the sky's kind of the limit with that. We've got some really cool guests coming on.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd like to see that really take off to where I can devote even more time to it. Yeah. So it's, it's people telling stories of work they do in entertainment. And so I'm hoping that something happens there. And I'm also writing as well. So I do a lot of writing on the side, and, you never know when someone will call wanting a certain script. So that could be something that could change for the better too. So we'll see.
And maybe someday you'll be making the calls to the production company, and there'll be a young guy that has, dreams and aspirations to be just like you, and they want to tell you the story. But hopefully they're to pick up the phone and hopefully you don't hang up on him.
Yeah, I won't do that. Fingers crossed that will happen. We'll see.
Well, Ryan, one last question, or a couple last questions that I'd like to ask everybody is, what is something that people may not know about you?
Something that they may not know about me. Let's see. Well, we did talk a little bit about basketball.
Mhm.
I'm short. I'm 5'8". So, but I did play college basketball,
Yeah.
which wasn't something that was ever supposed to happen. I played at Kalamazoo Valley Community College, and I don't think many people know it. I don't tell many people, but they certainly aren't going to look at me and go, "He played basketball somewhere." So I was their starting point guard for 2 seasons there. So I have a little skill with that. So that would probably surprise someone that, may be watching or listening.
Yeah, they may be like, were you able to jump high at one point? Were you fast? Because something well, anybody that's 5'8", that's a struggle, myself included. That's around that height. Basketball wasn't gonna work out for me for very long. So,
Yeah, that was several injuries ago. So that those days are no more. But it was a long time ago. But yeah, I could play a little bit.
well, since you have so much work that you've done in the movies, I usually ask people what they would title their autobiography. But what would you title the Ryan Cheevers biopic?
Oh, um, how about Over-a-Cheevers?
Oh, the play on words. I love that. Working the last
Yeah,
man.
I think. I mean, you gotta do it. I mean, it's set up too well. I mean, we've thrown that word around many times, but yeah, that would probably have to be it.
I think that's got to be it. And I just imagine the opening credits too, having be just like the Fairly Brothers type, just that 80s, 90s slapstick comedy kind of opening credits. I think the Overachievers would work.
I mean, I think it fits. It's perfect.
It's either that or the other side production company could always be the Overachievers. But I'm so glad that I learned more about you, and I love that we have reconnected, because I know we knew each other as young kids. We've reconnected, and you're doing some really cool things, and you have a wonderful family. So I'm so glad that we have reconnected, and I hope to have beers in the backyard with you soon.
Yeah, and my daughter wants to meet you face to face someday. You are like her biggest. You're like a massive celebrity to my 9-year-old. So that needs to happen as well.
She might have to be a guest on this podcast. I mean, with the big things she's doing, she might have to be.
Sounds good.